why the $2.5 million jet challenge was absolute torture.
Imagine standing in front of a gleaming $2.5 million private jet, and a guy walks up to you and says, if you can keep your hand flat against the metal of this plane longer than anyone else here, I will give you the keys. It's yours.
I mean, it sounds like a literal dream scenario, right?
Exactly. And you probably think, well, your biggest enemy in this situation is going to be sheer muscle failure or exhaustion, or maybe just like the elements outside.
Yeah, you assume your legs will just give out after a few days.
Right. But what if I told you that your biggest enemy, the actual thing most likely to cost you millions of dollars, is the sudden, overwhelming urge to just give your best friend a high five?
It sounds totally absurd when you phrase it that way, but honestly, it exposes a massive blind spot in how we think our own minds work. We love to believe we're these rational creatures in control of our actions.
Especially when the stakes are literally life-changing.
Right, exactly. But under pressure, that control just kind of glitches.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today's deep dive is centered on an incredibly revealing experiment that's, well, it's disguised as a chaotic YouTube challenge.
And it is very chaotic.
So chaotic. The creator, MrBeast, bought a private jet. He gathered 11 prominent YouTubers on an airport tarmac and gave them that exact rule. Don't lift your hand. If you take your hand off the plane or if you push someone else, you are instantly eliminated.
And we aren't just here to recap some crazy internet stunt today.
No, not at all. We are going to extract the psychological masterclass hidden within this entire premise. We'll explore the terrifying vulnerability of human attention, how the brain paces its own willpower, and the bizarre microeconomy that emerges when greed just totally stops working for you.
For anyone listening, this scenario is basically a perfect psychological pressure cooker. When you take people and put them under extreme artificial constraints with a massive prize, you strip away all that polite fiction about cognitive control.
You see the raw hardware, right?
Exactly. You get to see how our neurological hardware actually operates under stress.
Well, let's get right into those glitches then, because the very first casualties of this challenge completely blew my mind. You are competing for $2.5 million. You have one job: don't move your hand.
Seems simple enough.
You'd assume people drop out because they're in physical agony after 12 hours, but the simplest rule in the world isn't broken by fatigue. It's broken by the brain's own hardwired reflexes.
Yeah, we often call these unforced errors. It's where the system basically just trips over its own shoelaces.
Right. So one of the competitors, Vicstar, he gets eliminated almost immediately. And he isn't sweating, he isn't crying in pain, he's just having a casual conversation with the other guys.
It was just chatting, right?
Literally just chatting. He's saying he's in a, quote, good spot near the bottom of the plane. And absent-mindedly, right in the middle of his sentence, he just lifts his hand off the metal. He eliminates himself while making small talk.
Wow.
And then, it gets infinitely worse. Jimmy, the host, offers another competitor, Chunks, a $10,000 bribe just to walk away. It's literally the limit on his credit card.
Which is a classic temptation tactic, just trying to thin the herd early on.
Oh, for sure. So Chunks accepts the 10 grand, takes his hand off the jet, and steps away. Now, another competitor named Skeed gets so incredibly hyped that his buddy just made 10 grand that he goes in for a celebratory high five.
Oh, no.
Yes. Speed lifts his hand off the multi-million-dollar prize just to smack his friend's hand. Instantly eliminated. Now, I have to push back on this a little bit. I get turning down the car radio when you're looking for a specific address because, you're distracted.
Or cognitive load.
But we are talking about life-changing money here. Does the logical part of the brain just completely shut off for a high five?
What's fascinating here is that we are witnessing a real-time collision between a conscious, newly formed goal and millions of years of evolutionary programming.
Millions of years just overwriting a jet.
Yeah. Your prefrontal cortex, the logical planning part of your brain, it understands the abstract concept of a $2.5 million jet. It knows the rule.
Yeah.
But human beings are, at our core, deeply social primates.
Okay, so the social aspect takes over.
Completely. Reciprocating a social cue, like a high five, isn't a conscious choice. It's an automatic reflex managed by what we can call our social autopilot.
So the autopilot just forcefully overrides the logic center in that moment.
Totally. For thousands of years of human history, maintaining social bonds and celebrating with your tribe wasn't just polite. It was literally a matter of life and death. If you were ostracized, you didn't survive.
Right, you'd be out in the wild alone.
Exactly. So your brain is wired to prioritize immediate social connection over a highly abstract, future-oriented financial reward. When Speed sees his friend get that money, his brain registers an emotional spike. Mirror neurons fire.
And boom, he goes for the high five.
The autopilot takes the wheel to secure that social bond, completely bypassing the logical brain that's screaming, don't move your hand.
It's almost terrifying to realize how little conscious control we actually have in a split second of excitement. I mean, the environment introduces a sudden emotional spike, and our default programming just betrays us.
It's a cognitive bottleneck, really. Your brain only has so much bandwidth for active conscious thought.
So adding anything else is dangerous.
Exactly. If you introduce a secondary cognitive load like holding a conversation or processing a friend's sudden windfall, the conscious grip on that primary rule just slips. The social reflex operates so much faster than conscious thought.
Wow. So if the brain's social autopilot is so powerful that it overrides a $2.5 million prize, what happens when you start directly attacking the brain's spatial awareness?
Oh, this is where it gets really grueling.
Because that's exactly what Jimmy does next. And the environment itself shifts from being a static backdrop to a weaponized psychological tool.
Yeah, this is where the physical endurance element truly gets manipulated.
So Jimmy actually rented an entire massive public airport for this. The jet isn't just parked, it has clearance to taxi around.
That sounds incredibly dangerous, honestly.
It's wild. The sheer logistics of keeping a hand on a moving plane while walking alongside it is brutal. And after hours of this, the indignity really sets in. They bring out a bucket for bathroom breaks.
Right out on the tarmac.
Right on the tarmac. It's so grim that one competitor, Laser, literally crawls underneath the jet, holding onto the underbelly by just his fingertips, just to give the others some semblance of privacy to use this bucket.
The humiliation there adds an entirely new layer of cognitive friction. I mean, it degrades their morale, which directly impacts their physical stamina.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Eventually, Jimmy loads the remaining contestants inside the jet.
But they get to sit down.
No, the rule remains the same. You just have to keep touching the interior walls. Seats don't count. So once they are strapped in, the jet takes off.
Ah, okay.
They fly around for over an hour. The contestants are looking out the windows, completely disoriented, just throwing out guesses. Are they over Dublin? Liverpool? Milan? Are they near the Eiffel Tower?
They have no idea where they are.
None. And then Jimmy drops the hammer. He reveals they haven't gone anywhere near those places. They have literally just been flying in tight circles over Southend Airport the entire time.
That is a phenomenal disruption of their reality.
It reminds me exactly of casino architecture. You know how casinos intentionally remove clocks and windows?
Oh yeah, they want you completely disconnected from the outside world.
Exactly. They want to erase your spatial and temporal reference points so you lose track of time and just keep pulling the lever. But I have to ask, why go through the massive, staggering expense of flying a private jet in literal circles? Does taking away their sense of location actually make it physically harder for them to keep their hands on the wall?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes it profoundly harder. This tactic directly attacks a neurological mechanism known as willpower pacing.
Willpower pacing. Walk me through that. How does that work?
Well, whenever human beings endure physical pain or exhaustion, our brains are constantly running a background calculation. It measures how much energy reserve we have left against how far we have to go.
Like a gas gauge in a car.
Sort of, yeah. Think about running on a treadmill. If you know you're doing exactly 3 miles, your brain regulates your suffering. It releases just enough energy and suppresses just enough pain to get you across that specific finish line. You mentally budget your endurance.
But if you don't know where the finish line is...
Exactly. The brain cannot budget its energy. When these competitors are flying in a metal tube, guessing if they're in Italy or Ireland, and then discover they are just spinning in endless circles, the psychological finish line completely vanishes.
So the brain just panics.
Yes, the uncertainty triggers a massive cortisol spike. The brain panics because it can't map a route to the end of the suffering, so it starts screaming at the body to abort the mission immediately to preserve resources.
It's the exact same reason a 30-minute meeting at work feels like pure agony if it unexpectedly drags into hour 2, right? Once your predicted endpoint is destroyed, your endurance just evaporates.
That is a perfect everyday analogy. Uncertainty drains cognitive endurance drastically faster than the physical cane itself. By removing their geographical reality, the challenge weaponizes their own internal energy conservation systems against them.
And as that uncertainty sets in, and the physical pain genuinely spikes, the entire microeconomy of this challenge completely warps. Money loses its normal value.
Which is crazy to think about, given the prize.
I know, but because the jet only has 8 seats and Jimmy needs to be on board to facilitate the flight, one of the remaining players legally has to drop out before they can take off.
So they are forced into a sudden negotiation under extreme duress.
Right. So a player named Will is offered a bribe. He takes $20,000 to remove his hand so the rest of the group can fly.
20 grand is a lot, but compared to 2.5 million.
It's nothing. And shortly after, another contestant drops out for no money at all. He eliminates himself out of pure, unadulterated honesty.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He admits his hand slipped off the wall of the plane and brushed a seat for a split second, which violates the rules. No one else saw it, but he called himself out. But honestly, the most striking shift isn't the bribes or the honesty. It happens with the final remaining players.
This is where we see a fundamental evolution in their driving motivations.
Exactly. The host asks them why they are still holding on, why they are enduring this mind-numbing agony, and the answers have nothing to do with keeping a multi-million-dollar luxury jet for themselves.
It shifts away from personal gain.
Entirely. Nico says he wants to win to give the jet to his editor, George, who is ironically also competing. Another player shares this incredibly poignant story. He survived leukemia when he was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he says he wants to win the jet to sell it so he can take that massive pile of cash and give a head start to a child who just beat leukemia today. And then Harry, he just wants to win to split the prize with his brother and sister.
That is incredible.
This blew my mind. Are you telling me that playing for a $2.5 million prize for yourself just stops being enough of an incentive? Does greed really just have a battery life?
It absolutely does, especially when you hit the red line of human endurance. What we are seeing here is the critical physiological pivot from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic purpose-driven motivation.
Okay, break down the mechanics of that pivot for me. Why does greed fail in that moment?
Well, extrinsic motivation relies on external rewards, right? So fame, a shiny new jet, cash. Those rewards trigger dopamine in the brain, which provides excitement and energy.
Which is great at the start of the challenge.
Exactly. In the first few hours, that dopamine hit is a powerful fuel. But dopamine is a short-term chemical. As sleep deprivation sets in, as lactic acid builds up in the muscles, the brain's stress response, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, completely overwhelms that dopamine reward system.
So the body basically realizes the pain is outweighing the prize.
Precisely. The brain runs a very primal cost-benefit analysis and says, I do not need a luxury aircraft badly enough to endure this physical trauma. This isn't worth it.
So they have to find another reason to stay.
Yes. To push past that breaking point, humans require a profound why that exists outside of their own ego. By anchoring their suffering to someone else, a sick child, a sibling, a loyal friend, they hack their own pain tolerance.
We can endure more for others than ourselves.
Evolutionarily, yes. We are capable of enduring exponentially more pain to protect or provide for our tribe than we are to simply enrich ourselves.
They literally have to trick their brains into turning a greedy game show into a selfless rescue mission just to keep their legs from buckling.
It's the only way to override the central nervous system's demand to quit. They need an identity-level anchor.
And they needed every single ounce of that purpose, because as the sun comes up the next morning, the challenge enters a grueling final phase. Jimmy starts introducing extreme micro-constraints. The map starts shrinking.
The physical demands become hyper-focused.
Relentlessly so. Jimmy forces them to eat a dinner of steak and spaghetti using only one hand, picking at the meat with flimsy wooden forks while keeping their other hand pinned to the jet.
That sounds miserable.
And then he artificially shrinks the allowable space on the plane's exterior using red tape. If you touch or cross the red tape, you're eliminated. They are forced to bunch up, totally invading each other's personal space.
So they're crammed together.
Literally. They have to team up, placing their hands directly over other players' hands just to fit inside the tape. It breaks some of them. Nico, who was fighting so hard for his editor, struggles so deeply with the claustrophobia that he makes a desperate, fatalistic deal.
What does he do?
He flips a coin. Heads, his restrictive red tape is removed. Tails, he is eliminated. The coin lands on tails, and he just walks away.
Wow, that's pure decision fatigue right there. He just wanted an out.
Exactly. And then comes the ultimate constraint. The rule narrows down until eventually only one single index finger is allowed to touch the jet.
That is a staggering escalation of the physical stakes.
It immediately made me think of a battle royale video game like Fortnite. You have this shrinking circle mechanic that constantly forces players closer together to guarantee a chaotic conclusion.
Right, it forces a confrontation.
But in this case, it's not just shrinking space, it's psychological claustrophobia. You aren't just fighting fatigue anymore, you're fighting the panic of being trapped in a tiny box with someone else's hands on top of yours. But physically speaking, I have to ask, how does focusing all that exhaustion into a single index finger change the game? Does it make it easier because it's just one tiny digit to worry about, or does it make it infinitely worse?
This raises an important question about how the human brain and body compartmentalize sensory input. On paper, holding up one finger sounds drastically easier than pressing your whole body against the fuselage.
Right, less surface area.
But neurologically, it is infinitely worse because of the centralization of physical pain.
Meaning you can't disperse the stress anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Earlier, when the fatigue was systemic, you could shift your weight. You could lean a shoulder, slide your palm, distribute the physical load across different muscle groups.
You could manage the pain.
Yes, but when you restrict contact to a single joint, the index finger, you force all of that tension, every microtremor from exhaustion, and all your psychological focus into one incredibly fragile area. The somatosensory cortex in the brain, which processes touch and pain, gets entirely overwhelmed by the signals coming from that one specific digit.
There is nowhere for the brain to hide from the pain.
None. It completely transforms the nature of the test. You have to somehow mentally detach from the burning sensation in that specific finger joint while simultaneously remaining hyper-aware of its exact positioning.
The margin for error shrinks to literal millimeters.
Exactly. It stops being a test of blunt stamina and becomes a test of agonizing, excruciating precision.
And that agonizing millimeter scale precision brings us to an incredibly tense photo finish. It all comes down to two competitors, Harry, fighting for his siblings, and George, the editor.
Both with strong intrinsic motivations.
Yep, they are shattered, sweating, pushed to the absolute brink of human capability. And the climax of this multi-million-dollar standoff is decided by a single frame of video where one finger finally leaves the metal of the jet.
The ultimate inescapable margin of error.
Right. And Jimmy, being the orchestrator of this chaos, plays a brutal psychological trick. He reviews the tape and makes Harry think he lost.
Oh, that's cruel.
He tells him it was Harry's finger that lifted. You can see Harry's heart just break, but then Jimmy instantly pivots. Just kidding. Harry, you won. It was George's finger.
Talk about an emotional roller coaster.
Harry just collapses in sheer relief. He wins the $2.5 million private jet to split with his family. But you know, what I found truly fascinating isn't just the victory. It's the very final note of this transcript.
The environmental pledge, right?
Yes. Right after this emotional, chaotic climax, Jimmy pivots to a completely different tone and makes a highly specific announcement regarding the massive carbon footprint of a private jet.
The sudden injection of real-world consequence.
Exactly. He announces that they are offsetting 10 times the carbon emitted during the filming of this massive challenge. And not only that, he commits to offsetting any future carbon emitted by the winner whenever they fly the jet going forward.
Which is a huge financial commitment.
It is. But I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical. Isn't this just a calculated PR move bolted onto the end of a wasteful stunt?
It's easy to view it cynically as just a PR move, but it actually perfectly synthesizes the dichotomy of the modern creator economy. If you think about it, it is the ultimate final constraint.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have the absolute necessity of digital spectacle. To capture and hold human attention today, you have to engineer these massive, over-the-top, wildly expensive scenarios.
You need the $2 million explosions just to get people to click.
Yes, the scale of the chaos has to continually escalate to break through the noise. But on the other hand, operating at that extreme scale invites intense global scrutiny. Today's audiences are highly attuned to real-world impacts, especially environmental ones.
People will definitely call you out in the comments.
Oh, for sure. So modern creators find themselves balancing two opposing forces: the chaotic excess required for viral entertainment and a rigid, almost corporate spreadsheet-level accountability for the real-world footprint of that entertainment.
So what does this all mean? It's like throwing the absolute wildest, most destructive house party on the block, but then meticulously recycling every single solo cup and scrubbing the baseboards before the sun comes up to ensure the neighborhood association doesn't fine you.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It shows that the creators driving this economy aren't just orchestrating psychological endurance tests for the players. They are navigating an endurance test of their own.
A PR endurance test.
Yeah, they're simultaneously managing content creation, public relations, and complex environmental liabilities in real time.
It is a phenomenal tightrope walk between capturing our attention through absurdity and maintaining cultural approval through responsibility. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's just amazing to reflect on how a seemingly ridiculous YouTube video about touching an airplane perfectly illustrates the hidden vulnerabilities of the human mind.
It really covers a lot of psychological ground.
We saw how easily our evolutionary social reflexes can hijack our conscious logic. We explored how stripping away a sense of destination completely breaks down the brain's willpower pacing. And we learned how, in the end, extreme suffering demands deep, selfless motivation because greed simply runs out of battery.
It is a remarkable look at what happens when the rules are brutally simple, but the human hardware trying to follow them is infinitely complex.
It really is. And it leaves you with a final thought to mull over today. It is so easy to laugh at a guy for losing millions of dollars because he couldn't resist giving his buddy a high five.
Very easy to judge from the couch.
Right. But think about your own life. If a contestant's conscious willpower to win a life-changing prize can be completely hijacked by a simple, reflexive urge to celebrate a social moment, what subtle cues in your everyday environment are secretly forcing you to take your hand off the jet of your own long-term goals?
It's definitely something to think about the next time you reflexively reach for your phone instead of focusing on the deep work right in front of you.
Exactly. Until next time, keep your hand on the jet.